Gonzalez, and my research project proposal is titled The Impact of Exercise on Students' Mental Health and Well-Being, a literature review. Okay, so the problem statement here, right, inactive lifestyles are on the rise, and this is affecting students of all ages inside and outside the classroom. Sedentary behavior promotes the development of chronic diseases like obesity, hypertension, and high cholesterol. Right? These chronic diseases also influence mental health. A study from Zamzow in 2020 showed that inactive lifestyles contribute to mental health issues by limiting the endorphins students produce. Exercise is a natural and effective anti-anxiety treatment. It relieves tension, stress, and boosts physical and mental energy and enhances well-being through endorphin release. A study from Kirkar states it is well known that physical activity decreases the risk of developing major illnesses, but being physically inactive plays a vital role in the pathogenesis of the same. So, a combination of physical and mental ailments which feed one another can negatively impact quality of life while translating to the classroom in a variety of ways, such as lack of engagement or participation, truancy or absences, or poor academic performance. So the purpose of this study was to examine the impact exercise has on students' mental health and well-being. Right, it was also meant to highlight the prevalence of sedentary lifestyles among students, distinguish the primary side effects and consequences of inactivity, and depict how exercise prevents and improves an array of different conditions. Right, this study will be useful to educators, to parents, to administrators, and even students. Right, it's useful in understanding the state of many students, while also offering potential solutions or interventions that can be beneficial to students' health. So my primary research questions were, what is the prevalence of sedentary lifestyles or sedentary behavior among students post-COVID-19 lockdown? My second question, what is the correlation between sedentary lifestyles or obesity and physical or mental conditions? And my third, what is the impact of exercise on students' mental health and well-being? Okay, so then we get into our literature review, right? My first section is the prevalence and consequences of sedentary lifestyles, right? From the CDC itself, childhood obesity is a serious issue in the U.S., and according to the CDC, the prevalence of obesity in children and adolescents aged 2 through 19 from 2017 through 2020 was 19.7%. And this affected about 14.7 million children and adolescents. The CDC also found the U.S. obesity prevalence from March 2017 to March 2020 to be 41.9%. That is almost half of the population in the U.S. Overweight and obesity are major risk factors for a number of conditions, including cardiovascular diseases like heart disease and stroke, which are the leading causes of death worldwide. Being overweight can also lead to diabetes and its associated conditions, such as blindness, limb amputations, and the need for dialysis. The risk for these non-communicable diseases increases even when a person is only slightly overweight, and it grows more serious as your BMI increases. All right, the growing use of smartphones, playing computer games, and watching TV. All right, the time spent sitting down is steadily increasing compared to the time spent engaging in physical activities. All right, the results from 9 primary studies showed consistent negative mental health associations with sedentary behavior. The primary reason being screen viewing. And my second section of my literature review looks at increased mental health problems and education. A study from the British Journal of Sports Medicine states, mental illness is a serious public health issue. It is expected to account for 15% of the global burden of disease by 2020. And we are in 2022. That number, I'm sure, is surpassed. Anxiety has gained increased attention because of the high prevalence and its relationship to mental and physical illness. According to Logan, a study from Logan in 2018, large-scale surveys demonstrate that worldwide levels of anxiety have increased significantly over the past decades. So with many schools transitioning to the use of Chromebooks and different technology to assist with instruction, students might be getting too comfortable with screen time and inactivity. An article from the Canadian Medical Association Journal blames the rise of the smartphone era for promoting problematic internet use and internet addiction. There was a population of students in this study that spent more than 6 hours a day of their leisure time engaged in these types of activities. While another study looking at the associations between sedentary behavior and mental health among adolescents found strong, consistent evidence between the relationship of depressive symptomology and psychological distress, and the time spent using screens for leisure. Moderate evidence supported the relationship between low self-esteem and screen use, and poorer mental health status was found amongst adolescents using screen time more than 2 to 3 hours a day. My third section of the literature review looks at the impacts of exercise on mental health. Okay, one study found that physical exercise has been linked to the functioning of several neurotransmitters in the brain, including serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline, suggesting that physical exercise may act in the same way as SSRI antidepressants. And according to the Australian Nursing Journal, short periods of aerobic exercise can generate significant mood improvements for patients with major depressive disorders. And then while the an article from the Learning Disability Practice looked at exercise having an immediate short-term effect on symptoms of ADHD. And then we have another study looking at the effects of yoga and resistance training, or resistance exercise, on mental health and a sense of well-being in sedentary adults. Okay, it was observed that hatha yoga and resistance exercise affected quality of life, depression, body image, self-esteem, and fatigue levels in a positive way. Comparing the efficiency of the two different methods, it was found that hatha yoga improved fatigue, self-esteem, and quality of life more, while resistance exercise training improved body image more. In both hatha yoga and resistance exercise, though, both groups, depression symptoms decreased in a similar way, according to Tasfanar in a study of 2014. So my methodology looked at, my research design was a systematic literature review of existing data, and basically it highlighted all the relationships between sedentary behavior and poor mental health, along with increased risk for disease. A qualitative analysis was done looking at publications pertaining specifically to the prevalence of sedentary behavior and the associations to obesity or disease, as well as mental health problems and exercise. Research was cross-examined to interpret how exercise positively impacts both physical and mental health. My demographics were focused on students from K through 12 as well as university students, basically anyone that could be labeled a student. Furthermore, the research was done specifically to students that were sedentary and suffered from mental health conditions, such as depression or anxiety. My data collection, my online research was done through databases Academic Search Premier, EBSCOhost, and ProQuest. Research was performed using the search terms students, sedentary behavior, depression, anxiety, and exercise. Articles related to the prevalence of sedentary behavior in education were prioritized, as they gave accurate and reliable data needed to note trends and possible causality of different diseases. Another key focus used to sort through articles looked at the benefits exercise has on the highlighted diseases that are promoted by sedentary lifestyles. The articles chosen refer to students of all levels, primarily in the United States, although some of the articles that were reviewed do come from Asia and the United Kingdom. the information that is offered is still relevant and pertinent to the issue. So my data analysis. I analyzed the data, looking at basically different research articles and publications, and I used qualitative methods such as searching for similar patterns or commonalities between sedentary lifestyles and health problems among student populations. More specifically, I analyzed how sedentary behavior influences obesity and increases the risks for mental health conditions. The study also primarily analyzed the impact exercise has on improving mental health and overall wellness. So my ethical consideration, research was conducted using only 7 secondary methods where information was collected from prior studies and research publications to be qualitatively analyzed. One of my main ethical concerns was to avoid plagiarism, therefore you can see all my sources are cited. And privacy was also to be respected, so any participants or subjects in any of the studies were not identified to not compromise confidentiality. The limitations to this study revolved around difficulty finding publications targeting specifically students. The topics of obesity and mental health are heavily studied, as well as the benefits of exercise. But many of these studies are not aimed directly at students, rather they're in inpatient settings. So much of the research on exercise interventions for mental health occurred in a medical settings. But the effects of exercise are still applicable to students, making it pertinent to the study. All right, if the study was not specific to students, age range was considered to determine if a publication analyzed were relevant to the intended demographics. And these are all the sources cited in my presentation. Thank you.